Hi, my name is Keigh-Cee Bell. I'm the coordinator of the Carolee Tate Teaching and Learning Center. In this video, I'm going to do our APA Bootcamp. This is everything you need to know to write your first APA essay, or a good refresher if you haven't written one in a while. Before diving in, remember, always follow your instructor or professor's guidelines first. Your instructor's preferences override any style rules or conventions that are standard in APA or any other format. After all, they're the ones grading you. Language use in APA format is different from the expressive language you might be used to with MLA format. This is because APA is the style of research and STEM disciplines. It's meant to be factual, concise, and even plain. Use active voice and passive pronouns wherever appropriate. Your language should be clear and specific, concise, and very plain. Avoid figurative, flowery language. Think of how you would present information to a nurse or another medical professional or a CEO of a company. They want things to be short, factual, and to the point, and that's exactly what APA wants. APA now has different requirements for professional and student essays. For the purposes of this guide, we'll discuss how to write a student essay. First, the title page. Every APA essay has a title page or a cover sheet. This is also the first page in terms of pagination. Don't forget to put a page number in the top right-hand corner. 3 double-spaced lines down, you'll center your title and you'll bold it. It may be 1, 2, or even 3 lines long. Longer titles are perfectly fine as long as they're factual and descriptive. Below that, list your name without any titles, degrees, or certifications, the name of your college or institution, the name of your class, your instructor's full name with title, and finally, the due date of the essay. This is not the last date you touched the essay, but the day it's actually due. Again, I'd like to caution you to use your instructor's guidelines first. APA formatting has changed significantly from the 6th to 7th edition, and at the time of this video, the 6th edition is still in use in some classrooms. Your page header should appear at the top margin of every page. For student essays, the page header consists of only the page number flushed right. For any professional papers and manuscripts, the page header is the page number and the running head, or a condensed title of the essay. This was another big change from APA 6 to 7, is that running heads are no longer necessary for student essays. But again, if your instructor requests it, listen to the instructor first. While unlikely while you're here at SMC, you may be required to write an abstract in the future. Most of our classes don't require it, but check with your instructor first. An abstract most often presents a summary of original research finding detailed in the essay and may be used as a general overview of the essay. This is not the same as the introduction, that will come later. The abstract is just a list of key points written in paragraph form. Use your essay's outline for a good head start on writing your abstract. The title of your abstract will always simply be abstract, so don't worry about being creative here. Abstracts are meant to be short, 150 to 250 words. They help other researchers quickly determine if your essay includes the information that they want. Align it left, no indent, and then after the summary, indent and list 3 to 5 keywords about the essay. Italicize keywords label only. It might feel like it took a long time to get here, but your actual essay will start on the 2nd or 3rd page of your submission, depending on whether or not an abstract is required. You're going to repeat the title at the top of the essay, centered in title case and bold, just the same font as the rest of the essay. Also, indent your paragraphs 1 tab space, and then make sure your essay is double-spaced. Lastly, don't forget to have your header continue throughout the essay with the page number in the top right-hand corner. Most essays in APA use section headings. This is used to transition from topic to topic rather than having to have lengthy sentences transitioning you. Section headings in APA follow a specific hierarchy. It's important to note that these headings are used to organize main ideas and their key points, not to count the number of topics. Heading 1 houses heading 2, and heading 2 houses heading 3, and so forth. If you move into a new main section, you'll go back to heading 1 to label it. Unlike APA 6, All headings are now written in the title case. Here is an example of what your headings will look like. Heading 1, like the title, is centered and bolded. Heading 2 is bold and left aligned. Heading 3 is bolded and left aligned, but also indented and italicized. Heading 4 does not get its own line. Instead, it's the first sentence of its paragraph. It's indented, bolded, and separated from the rest of the text by a period. Don't worry too much about heading 3 and heading 4. Most of the time in your early essays in APA, you'll only utilize heading 1 and heading 2, but it's good to remember in the future in case you need subheadings for very, very tricky topics. Now that we've got our formatting out of the way, let's start talking content. You're going to be utilizing sources in your essay, and if you quote directly from a source, you're going to put the text in quotation marks and include a parenthetical citation so we know where the source comes from. For example, I have, quote, "Consumerization of IT doesn't just mean bringing your own device to work and using consumer apps and services. Its influence also changing the way traditional enterprise apps look, feel, and operate." End quote. Parentheses, McLellan, comma, 2013, comma, P.3, close parentheses, period. If the source that you're quoting from has page numbers, you're going to include that in your citation. If the source does not have page numbers, though, you're going to include a paragraph number instead. Keep in mind, while you can use quotes, you should use them sparingly. When you can, we would prefer that you paraphrase. When you paraphrase or put another author's ideas into your own words, you still must cite the source. For example, I have from the same source in the quote example, "While device purchasing guidelines can be a headache, they are necessary. If every person has a different device, it can be a nightmare for troubleshooting and security." Parentheses, McLellan, comma, 2013, and parentheses, period. You'll notice I do not have a page or paragraph number. If you're paraphrasing, it is not necessary to include this information, but you do still need to use the author's last name and the year. As I mentioned before, we prefer paraphrasing rather than quotations. This is because it shows you understand the source material. The source material can be condensed, and it really gives you a chance to connect the ideas to your essay. And most importantly, it's you. We care about you, your ideas, and your writing way more than we care about the writing of someone we don't know and that we're not grading. As I mentioned before, whenever you utilize source material, whether quoted or paraphrased, you must include an in-text citation. In-text citations in APA typically include an author's last name and the year the source was published. Why do we ask for the year? Well, it's important in the medical and business reporting fields. You can think about the cell phone you used 5 years ago and how different that looks, or the advances made in medical technology in the last 10 years. For example, I have here an in-text citation. It's a parentheses, Jones, comma, 2019, end parentheses. Fairly often, we'll have students reach out to us because they might be missing information required for in-text citations and they don't know how to move forward. So for example, what happens if there's no author? No worries, you can't cite what you don't have, so use the title. That's what's up next in your citation. You don't have to use the whole title either if it's long. You can use just the first few words. Just make sure it's easy for us to tell which source you're utilizing. What if you can't find the publication date or year? This happens pretty often for web sources. Again, it's not a problem. You can't cite what you don't have. Just include N period, D period in place of the date. So for example, I'll have parentheses, Jones, comma, N period, D period, end parentheses. Writer beware. If you can't find a date, the validity of your source could be questioned. In technology, in medical field, and in most of these research-based fields, it's important to have the most recent research available. Generally speaking, if a source is more than 5 years old, it's probably not reliable. So if you can't find a date, it may not be the best source. When you introduce an author actually in the text of your paper, you also need to introduce the year. you should include the year of publication in parentheses right after the author's name. So for example, we have according to Jones, parentheses, 1998, parentheses, comma, quote, students often had difficulty using APA style, especially when it was their first time. Quote, parentheses, P period 199 end parentheses period. So here, since I've introduced the author's name and the year in my sentence, I don't need to include that in my parenthetical citation at the end. I only have the page number. If this was a paraphrase, I wouldn't have the page number either. I would just have according to Jones, and then the year again in parentheses, and then the paraphrased material. There would be no parenthetical citation at the end. Let's discuss capitalization, italics, and underlining when you're talking about sources in your text. Always capitalize proper nouns, including author names and initials. If you refer to a major title in your essay, italicize the title and use title case. This is for books, journals, and etc., larger pieces. If you refer to a smaller work, like an article or a chapter in a book, use double quotes and do not italicize, and use sentence case. The references page gives most writers the most anxiety whenever they're writing, whether it's APA, MLA, or Chicago style, whatever it is. It seems like you spend more time here than actually writing the essay. But don't worry, it's not as hard as you think, and if you can do references for one style, you can do them for any. Just think of them like a recipe, put the ingredients in the right spot, you'll be fine. So when you're formatting your references page, you're going to start a whole new page, regardless of how much is on the previous page. Center the title, which will be references, at the top of the page. Double space all of your entries. The first line should be flush left, and then use a hanging indent for every line after. This means they'll be tabbed over. Order entries alphabetically, and use sentence case unless you're talking about proper nouns or the title of a major work like a book or a journal. You're also going to italicize titles of longer works like books or journals. Do not italicize, underline, or put quotes around the titles of shorter works like journal articles or essays. That sounds pretty confusing. Let's take a look at an example. On our sample page, it is titled References and it is centered. You can't see it here, but behind this green block, there's also a page number in the top right-hand corner. Keep that going. We are utilizing the hanging indent and everything's in alphabetical order. Also, article and page titles are in sentence case. So you're only capitalizing proper nouns or the first word of the sentence or the first word after a colon. And then journals are capitalized and italicized, all major words. If you look at the hue, it's the third one. That one is the example that I'm looking at specifically because it has an article / page title and also a journal title. This is a good example. When creating your citation, author's names should be inverted and you'll only use the first and middle initials, not names. So for example, I have Jones, comma, A period, B period. Give the last names and initials for up to and including 20 authors. This is another big change from APA 6. Always put the authors in the order in which they appear on the publication. If you only have 2 authors, separate the names with a comma and an ampersand. So we'll have Jones, comma, A period, B period, comma, ampersand, Smith, comma, P period. If you have 3 or more authors, separate the names with a comma and use the ampersand before the last author only. In some cases, you may use sources that have groups or corporations that are their authors. This will include companies, government agencies, any governing organization, dictionaries, encyclopedia. There are a lot of examples. You'll treat the publishing organization like you would an author's name. For example, I have an entry from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and Merriam-Webster is treated as the author. This is also true for like the Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins University, anything that publishes under a blanket group that does research. Like I mentioned before, many students have anxiety about actually creating citations and avoiding plagiarism. Don't be anxious, it's pretty easy. Like I mentioned, just think of it like a recipe and put the ingredients in the right spot. Here we're going to discuss how to cite some certain things that you may be using most often in your essays. Let's start with electronic sources. If you have a web page or a piece of content online, you're going to include the author's last name, comma, first initial, middle initial. Those will have periods after them. Then parentheses, year, comma, month, date, and parentheses, period. If you can't find the month and the date, just include the year. Then you'll have italicized the title of the page. It'll be in sentence case, a period, and then the name of the overall website, then another period. And then you'll include the URL. It's as simple as that. So we have our example, price, comma, D, 2018, March 23rd. Laziness does not exist, medium, and then the URL. If you're utilizing an online scholarly journal article, you're going to include the author's last name and initials, the year in parentheses, the title of the article, not italicized, no quotes, nothing special, in sentence case. Then the title of the periodical will be in title case and italicized, as will the volume. Then in parentheses, you'll include the issue, page numbers, and then you'll include the DOI or the URL. If there's a DOI, that is preferred, but if not, include the URL. You do not need to include both. You may notice that database is not listed here. In APA, if you use a database, you do not need to include the database name. Next, let's talk about books. Don't forget, we have some great books available in the Fred L. Matthews Library on the Dowagiac campus. We have our author's last name, comma, and then the initials, the year of publication in parentheses, and then you'll have the title of the work, and then a capital letter also for the subtitle. This will be in italics. Then you'll include the publisher's name and a DOI if it's an ebook and available. For an edited book, you're going to include all of the same information, but in parentheses after the title, you're going to have E period and then the editor's last name. For lecture notes, presentation slides. So this might be a class presentation that you utilize. You'll include the person's last name, first and middle initial. Then you'll have the year and the month and the date in parentheses. You'll have the title of the presentation, and then you'll include whether it's lecture notes, PowerPoint slides, or what medium it is, and then a URL if that's available. For computer software, you'll include last name, first or middle initial, or the name of the group. This is whoever created or publishes this software. The year, and then the title of the software with a version number behind that in parentheses. Then you'll include the publisher and the URL if available. I know this is a lot of information, and the good news is we will never ask you to memorize it all. There are a few resources out there that we highly recommend that you can utilize. First is the Purdue Online Writing Lab, or the Purdue OWL. The URL is owl.purdue.edu. This is an online source that includes everything you need for citations for MLA, APA, Chicago Style, and more. We also recommend using the APA Style website. It's apastyle.apa.org. Also, the Teaching and Learning Center on campus is a great resource. We have writing consultations that are available for all academic essays. If you would like to utilize the Teaching and Learning Center, or TLC, making an appointment is easy. Under Student Resources in Wired, just click Teaching and Learning Center and then make an appointment. Also, check out our Moodle page. All students are enrolled in it. If you go to your Moodle dashboard, you'll see us there. Click there and there's a lot of great resources for you. Our hours for the fall and spring semester are Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Fridays from 8 to 5. If you have any questions, you can email me, Keigh-Cee, at kbell07@swmich.edu or tutoring@swmich.edu. Both of those come directly to me. I'm happy to help you make an appointment, or if you just have any quick questions, I can help you there as well. Thanks for watching and have a great day.